Welcome back to Grammar Unit 3. In this video, I'll explain the answers on the key that you use to correct your exercises about pronoun types. On the key and in this video, I've labeled all of the nouns with their functions to help clarify the pronouns. Feel free to skip ahead to the explanations of the specific questions that you missed or didn't understand. Remember, you can always ask your teacher for further clarification as well. Number 1. Something in the attic is making a noise which is frightening me. The verbs in this sentence are is making and is frightening. The pronouns begin with something. It is an indefinite pronoun and it is acting as the subject of the verb is making. Remember, the subject will not be found in the prepositional phrase, which is why I have labeled the object of the preposition attic. The next pronoun is which. It's a relative pronoun because it begins a clause that describes a noun or pronoun. It describes its antecedent noise. It's also acting as the subject in the clause for the verb is frightening. The final pronoun in this sentence is me. It's a personal pronoun and it's acting as the direct object of the action verb frightening. Number 2. Slim and Shady ate some of the tuna that their father left in the refrigerator for them. Our verbs are ate and left. They're both action verbs. The first pronoun is some. It's an indefinite pronoun and it's acting as the direct object of the action verb ate. What was eaten? Some. The antecedent of some is the noun tuna. The next pronoun is that. It's a relative pronoun because it begins a clause that describes a noun, tuna, its antecedent. It's acting as a direct object within its clause. Father left what? That. The final pronoun in this sentence is them. It's a personal pronoun. It's renaming the subjects Slim and Shady, its antecedents, and it's acting as the object of the preposition for. Number 3. All of the girls in 8th grade gave one another valentines, so everyone received several in her locker. The verbs in the sentence are gave and received, both action verbs. The first pronoun is all. It's indefinite, and it's acting as the subject of the verb gave. The next pronoun is one another. It's a reciprocal pronoun demonstrating that all of the girls are involved in the action. It's acting as the indirect object. Because you have an action verb gave, you need to ask yourself who or what was given, what received the action of the verb. Valentines is the noun that is the direct object. Once you've identified the direct object, you ask yourself who or what received the direct object, and that indicates your indirect object. In this case, one another. The next pronoun is everyone. It is also indefinite, and it is acting as the subject of the action verb received. Again, because you have an action verb, you're going to look for a direct object. In this case, several is our pronoun that is acting as the direct object of the action verb received. It's also indefinite. Number 4. When we asked everyone at the camp the question about the snipe after the campfire last night, many of the older campers laughed. The verbs in our sentence are asked and laughed. The first pronoun is we. It's a personal pronoun, and it's acting as the subject to the verb asked. Again, we have an action verb. We need to ask ourselves who or what was asked, what received the asking, which indicates our direct object question. Then you ask yourself, once you've identified a direct object, do I have an indirect object? Did something receive the direct object? In this case, everyone received that question, and so it's the indirect object, and it is an indefinite pronoun. The next pronoun is many. It's also an indefinite pronoun, and it is acting as the subject of the verb laughed. Again, be careful not to look in a prepositional phrase for the subject of the verb. Many laughed. Campers is the object of the preposition. Number 5. Malia gave herself a raise after she paid the rest of the employees who remained in the firm. The verbs in this sentence are gave, paid, and remained, which are all action verbs. The first pronoun is herself. It is a reflexive pronoun that indicates that Malia completed the action by herself or to herself. It is acting as the indirect object because the direct object of the action verb gave is raise. Malia gave herself a raise. The next pronoun is she. It's a personal pronoun that refers or renames Malia, and it's acting as the subject of the action verb paid. The next pronoun is rest. It's indefinite, and it is also acting as a direct object. You ask yourself after an action verb, who or what was paid? The rest were paid. You won't have a direct object in a prepositional phrase, so employees is not the DO. Number 6. The verbs in this sentence are swirled and were searching. The first pronoun is some. It's an indefinite pronoun, and it's acting as the subject of the action verb swirled. Remember, you won't find the subject of a verb in a prepositional phrase, so leaves is just the object of the preposition and not the subject. Our next pronoun is one another. It's reciprocal, referring back to the leaves, and it's acting as the object of the preposition around. The next pronoun is they. It's a personal pronoun, its antecedent is leaves, and it's acting as the subject to the verb were searching. And the final pronoun is somebody. It's also indefinite, and it's acting as the object of the preposition for. Number 7. This is the final straw, Mr. Darcy complained when Mrs. Bennet invited herself to tea after she insulted him. Our verbs are is, which is a be verb, complained, an action verb, invited, an action verb, and insulted, our final action verb. Our first pronoun is this. It's demonstrative, and it's acting as the subject of the be verb is. Our next pronoun is herself. This is a reflexive pronoun that indicates Miss Bennet completed the action of inviting. It's also acting as the direct object. What did Mrs. Bennet invite? Herself. The next pronoun is she. It's a personal pronoun. It refers back to Miss Bennet, and it's acting as the subject of the verb insulted. And our final pronoun is him. It's also a personal pronoun. It refers back to Mr. Darcy, and it's acting as the direct object for the action verb insulted. Number 8. According to the director herself, the costumes will be ours once we finish the play that will debut next week. Our verbs are will be, finish, and will debut. Our first pronoun is herself. It's an intensive pronoun, and we know this because it's acting as an appositive, renaming the noun director that comes right before it. Director is an object of the preposition according to. The next pronoun is ours. It's possessive, indicating who owns the costumes. And it's acting as the predicate nominative because it follows a be verb and renames the subject, costumes. The next pronoun is we. It's a personal pronoun referring to the speakers, and it's acting as the subject to the action verb finish. The final pronoun in the sentence is that. It's a relative pronoun that begins the dependent clause that describes play, its antecedent, and it acts as the subject of the clause for the verb will debut. Number 9. What is the name of the person who tied himself to the mast so that he could hear all of the songs of those dangerous creatures? In this sentence, we have the verbs is, a be verb, tied, an action verb, and could hear, a modal auxiliary and an action verb. Our first pronoun is what. It's interrogative because it is beginning a question, and it is acting as the subject to the be verb is. Our next pronoun is who. It's a relative pronoun because it begins a clause that describes its antecedent, person, and it's acting as the subject of the action verb tied. The next pronoun is himself. It's a reflexive pronoun and indicates that the subject, who, completed the action to or by himself. It's acting as a direct object of the action verb tied. The next pronoun is he. It's a personal pronoun and it's acting as the subject of the verb could hear. Our final pronoun is all. It's an indefinite pronoun and it's acting as the direct object for the action verb could hear. Be careful with the word those. Even though it looks like a demonstrative pronoun, it is actually acting as an adjective because it modifies the noun that it's placed next to, creatures. Number 10. You yourself should offer the reward because the lost dog that you hope to find is yours. Our verbs are should offer, the modal auxiliary should with the action verb offer, hope, an action verb, and is, a be verb. Our first pronoun is you. It's a personal pronoun and it's acting as the subject for the verb should offer. Our second pronoun is yourself. It's an intensive pronoun, and we know that it's an intensive pronoun because it acts as an appositive for the noun or pronoun right before it. It is renaming you and adding emphasis. Be careful not to confuse appositives with predicate nominatives that must follow a be or linking verb. The next pronoun is that. It's a relative pronoun because it begins a clause that describes the noun or pronoun in front of it, dog. It is acting as a direct object in its clause. You hope to find that. It's a little confusing, but we'll review it in more detail later. The next pronoun is you. It's a personal pronoun and it's acting as the subject of the action verb hope. The final pronoun in this sentence is yours. It's a possessive pronoun that is renaming dog, and it's acting as a predicate nominative because it is following a be verb and renaming that noun dog. Number 11. These tattered sweaters must be somebody's, but I would never wear them. I prefer those that do not have holes. Our verbs are must be, would wear, prefer, and do have. Remember, not is not a verb. It is an adverb of negation. Our first pronoun is somebody's. It's a possessive pronoun renaming sweaters, the subject, and acting as a predicate nominative because it follows a be verb. Our next pronoun is I. It's a personal pronoun and it's acting as the subject of the verb would wear. Never is also an adverb of negation, so we don't count that as a verb. Our next pronoun is them. It's a personal pronoun and it's acting as the direct object of wear. Its antecedent is sweaters. The next pronoun is I. It is a personal pronoun and it is acting as the subject for the verb prefer. The next pronoun is those. It's a demonstrative pronoun pointing out other sweaters, and it's acting as a direct object for the action verb prefer. Our final pronoun is that. It's a relative pronoun because it begins a clause that modifies or describes a pronoun or noun next to it. This one is modifying the pronoun those, and it's acting as the subject of the verb to have. Number 12. After the partners congratulated each other on their early victories, they wondered what would happen if both of them lost in the final round. Our verbs are congratulated, wondered, would happen, and lost. All action verbs except for our modal auxiliary would. Our first pronoun is each other. It is reciprocal, acting as the direct object of the action verb congratulated. And because it is each other, we know that there are only two partners that are involved in the action. The next pronoun is they. It is a personal pronoun. It refers back to the partners and is acting as the subject of the verb wondered. What is our next pronoun? It's interrogative because it indicates something that is unknown. It is acting as the subject of the verb would happen. The next pronoun is both. It's indefinite and it acts as the subject of the verb lost. The last pronoun is them. It's personal, it refers back to the partners, and it is acting as the object of the preposition of. That's it for now, but remember, if you have any further questions, please reach out to your teacher.